That's what we need, man. We need sound. We need music. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Medieval Madness moment with Trashwells&Bogan. Bogan is back, and we are going to have a fun madness adventure for you. 1, go. Bogan, it's good to see you back in the studio, man. Welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you, Trashwells. It was quite an adventure. I made it to the Atlantic Ocean and then all the way back over to the Pacific in about, I want to say 6 days, about a week.
It's most impressive on the second vacation. Everybody's jealous. We got to catch up with you, man.
It was a double header, so I left Friday, headed out to North Crack, a cold one. Got to see some people, have a good time. Left there Sunday, and then I got back to the Rockies Sunday evening. Took a little time to recoup, and then the next morning I actually went and rented a car. And so I was on the road Monday morning with some car parts for our brother in California. So I drove all the way out to California, dropped off the car parts, and helped him do a little work on his house. He's remodeling his house, trying to sell it. Just like everybody else right now, he's trying to get out of California. So,
Making moves.
I have a couple funny stories. This one, I just got to share this one because
go right ahead.
I didn't. Maybe it's just my own ignorance. Maybe I didn't understand the full breadth of this pandemic we are in right now. But as I was walking along in the airport, there's this just like a sign hanging from the ceiling, and I'm not like a super tall guy, but
Taller than me.
yeah, about average, 6 feet. And so I reached up and I slapped the sign just as like a, hey, making it through the airport kind of thing.
I'm here making my
And
show
this, and
entrance.
This woman, she's like, "Sir, excuse me, sir." I figured she must have been talking to me, so I looked at her, and she said, and I quote, "There could have been COVID on that." I didn't know it worked like that. I thought it was more of a human-to-human transmittal, but apparently you can get COVID from touching a sign. So look out, people. It's running rampant in those airports, apparently.
But it is dying. I mean, the news outlets are projecting that we should get back to normal by June, and I think it's going to be an actual summer. So
Could be a good summer.
Yeah, I might take some time off of work too, just to have some fun. But let's just get into the show right now. So that was a pretty funny story because it's funny how people are overreacting.
I got more of them,
But let me before I get in to why we're playing medieval tavern music on our show right now. We got a fun and interesting show ahead for everybody, and so let's just go over the 3 no's of the show. That's no swearing, no politics, and no proper nouns of people, places, or things that if anybody doesn't want their consent known, or
no calling anybody out.
No calling anybody out on the show. We're just here to have a good time and hopefully quit our day jobs in a couple of months and just
the goal is to bring some joy to people, right?
Yeah, because there's enough crazy stuff going on out there as it is.
Exactly.
But we got a special show today. Everybody else, just sit back, relax, and you have our voices stuck with you for the next 30 minutes or so. We're going to try to have a fun adventure. So the reason why we're having medieval music is that we are going to act like we are a knight, and we are forming our society, starting how would we survive, where would we gather our resources, what time periods would we want to be in or wouldn't want to be in, and mention some heroes and some very interesting stuff, because the medieval times always does fascinate me. It's interesting that there's not that much factoids that are known. There's still a lot that people don't know. Like, I've always wondered, how long did a night last? How many battles did that person go through? What was the life expectancy
what was
of that night?
like?
What was it really like?
Are trudging around and 200 pounds of steel.
Oh, definitely. And we also have been a back and forth argument. Everybody knows this between me and Trashwells. That's me. Hey, me and Bogan, and that we really want to go on a jousting contest. And I hate to tell you, man, I've rode on a horse once. You haven't. You'd probably be scared to get near a horse.
Yeah, actually,
I don't think you'd survive.
Well, let me talk about my background with horses. My last experience actually with a horse was in Illinois, and our neighbor at the time had a horse and a carriage, like a little horse and buggy kind of setup. And I remember being in that buggy, and she was just riding us around the yard, but the horse was super skittish. And I guess I was like, I don't know, I guess I made a loud noise or something. We went over a bump. I was like, oh, wow. And the horse got a little agitated. Short story long, it freaked out, took a 90-degree turn, threw everybody off of the little buggy. The poor woman we were with broke her arm. I was fine, but
They had a speedy recovery.
that was my last experience with horses, so I don't know. I don't know if you've ever stared a horse down, like maybe 10 feet away. That's a big animal.
They are
It's a
big.
big
You
animal.
definitely don't want to get kicked by one, like in a few movies we've seen, but it's...
Wow, but then think about a full-grown horse with a fully armored knight. That is a menacing sight.
Yeah, but could you get your armor on?
So I think they
Would you be able
actually
to-
had, didn't they have like squires and stuff, right? Like the squire's job was to help the knight get all their stuff. They
Probably.
even had like armor bearers.
Yeah, the little errand boys. Not so much as a squire, but the guy who would hand them their sword, hand them their what was it, the chain mail that they would put on first.
Yeah, and again, there are people who have spent really their whole lives looking into medieval armor and techniques and whatnot. But what I think is kind of interesting is when we say medieval, it's like 1,000-year time period.
Well, there's a difference. There's biblical times, and then there's medieval, which is like the 1400s. Biblical, the Crusades. That was a long time ago.
That was all around the same time. But I'm thinking more like the hundreds. So like the 800s, the 900s, 700s. That's still medieval, or does medieval start with the Renaissance?
I don't know.
The Renaissance is after. You can tell we're not big history students.
Yeah, but we just like to nerd out on this stuff all the time. Like, what would you consider William Wallace? Would you say that would be medieval times, or?
Yeah, so that was
Tell everybody-
Scotland getting their independence from England. And, well, I just looked up real quick. Medieval ages, apparently according to the World Wide Web, the medieval ages or medieval period lasted from the 5th to the late 15th century. So it is moving up to that. And then I think after that is when the Renaissance take over and people start using gunpowder and
Then you get the Spanish War and
world
stuff like that. Yeah,
colonization starts. So
industrial era.
So
and
we're
all
thinking more like pre-gunpowder,
that. Way back,
swords, indentured servants, all that good stuff.
chambermaids, stuff like that. All that fun stuff.
All that good stuff. What I always wonder is, you were saying knights,
Yeah.
but then if we get away, because the knights are kind of like I don't want to say superheroes, but they're kind of,
The one person that everybody would look up to.
yeah, they were most of them were noble, because I remember watching some documentary about armor, and they were saying that a full suit of armor cost about the equivalent of like $100,000 nowadays.
But that's crazy to think about. But if you even look at the armor today, were they able to even see out of those things? I mean, did they have it at that time of battle? Did they even have it fit so that it's, it was able, you can see and move around in it? Or because it was so old now, that it's just got all worn, torn, and maybe we're just looking at it a different way.
Yeah, and I think if you're sitting there and this is a normal part of your life, right? These guys grew up in armor, so to speak. It's not like they just threw on their coat of armor when there was a war. I would imagine that they were always practicing, always.
Well, look at the Spartans, but that's going a little bit
Well,
further
so that's
back.
way
That's with the
back. That's like
Greeks and
BC,
the Romans.
yeah,
That's
we're
BC.
going way.
Those guys were at each other's throats all the time, doing conquests and
It's
campaigns.
actually kind of interesting because if we do take a step back, way back to those times, all these stories about these city-states and the way they're portrayed and the way you read them, at least I'll speak for myself, the way I read them, is when I'm reading them, I'm thinking these far displaced city-states, when in reality some of the most brutal conflicts were between city-states that were not 20 miles away from each other.
That's pretty crazy.
It's pretty intense,
Yeah.
but then if we fast forward again maybe 1,000 years up to where we're talking medieval, it seems like everything was really concentrated in sort of
Resources.
well, in Western Europe.
Yeah.
So you've got France, Spain. Of course, they all had different names at the time. And it seems like it was just a rabble of like little duchies, like small. I don't want to say city-states because they're not city-states.
Yeah, it was mostly by different regions.
Right.
And, where the king ruled the castle.
The king's got his castle,
land
and he's got
his knights and all his.
maybe a town outside and 100 acres of farm.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a history
Buff.
student. I really enjoy history. I think it's a lot of fun. I think people need to know history so that they can prevent it from repeating itself.
But just so that they can be aware what's like how much the culture has changed. So we're going to go to a little bit kind of a fun approach here. And I had the idea of questioning Bogan. Could he, if he was a knight, would he be able to survive the actual environment? I mean, I was just telling him today how I would put a pig on a spit, how I would dig the hole with the, make a campfire, use the flint and get everything all right. But even if they didn't have flints back then, I would just use sticks, try to find.
You're gonna get a pig, you're gonna dig a hole,
You got to kill a pig
and then
first.
you're gonna start your fire with sticks.
Well, you got to get it so it won't spread.
There had to be a better way to do it than that.
You got to get your coal. You got to get your wood.
I don't think they were burning coal at that time.
They're probably just using hot wood that they were using, I'd probably say. So
Yeah.
then you would obviously find some way to construct the spit for the pig. Obviously, pigs are really common. You got farms and stuff like that, and you can find wild pigs, what have you.
So you're thinking more like medieval construction techniques?
Yeah, so you start on the bottom, ground up. So, like, how would you build your foundation? Say you're a knight. You got your little, place of land. You got your house. You got
Servants.
maybe servants. You're
Probably a bunch
right. You're
of
right underneath
farmers.
the king. You're serving the king, being a noble knight, not a corrupt one, because I'm sure there were.
Oh man!
And
Could you imagine the corruption those days?
oh yeah.
Jeez.
Well, also just like but we're not going to get into that. But yeah, so
political beeper.
Yeah, the political beeper beep. So yeah, so you got your land, you got everything you already. You're by a whole bunch of a big forest. You got maybe I would probably say you're a knight, so you probably have your family. You got some hired helpers, maybe a couple of slaves.
Indentured servants.
Servant,
kind of thing,
servant. So what would your you wake up one morning and be like, I'm going to try to expand. Not obviously make a coup for the king, because you don't want to
Right.
do that, but just to be a noble knight for the king. Obviously, they
I
got
think
their.
that's actually a good point, because at that time, and again, if anybody out there is a bigger history buff than we are, please correct us where we're wrong. But I think it was, before the Black Death, of course.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in Europe, right? And so there wasn't a lot of just empty land. So if you wanted to expand your little province, it's not like you can just go put a stake in the ground and say this swamp is mine now, right? I mean, it's kind of like now everybody's got their
usually the king owns usually the king owns a certain portion of land where the castle is, and he's the ruler of that, region. And so what would you do? Would you start I guess the first thing I would do is have everybody start chopping down wood, because wood is a very good resource. What you need, you can burn fire, keeps you warm. And you can build more. You're a carpenter, man. You know about the diameter of wood better than I do. And
well, yeah. What kind of sticks are we using here? Is this maple? We got a little cedar, maybe. But no, I see what you're saying as far as trying to expand your realm. I think it would be pretty confined, and maybe that's what led to so much conflict in Europe, because that whole period, what did we say, 500 to 1500?
Yeah,
was just juicy with conflict.
Yeah, and not much is documented about it. I mean,
we know a lot of documentation, but not like a day-to-day.
No, what's
journal.
It like? And there's
what does
been
a knight do when they wake up? What do you think their daily routine is? Did they have toothbrushes back then?
No, they probably didn't. They just yanked people's teeth out if they got bad and stuff like that. And the medical, system was all messed up. But also we were just talking about Joan of Arc, how what a crazy, enlighten a little bit people about that, what was going on.
Well, Joan of Arc was, if I'm correct, Joan of Arc came around the 100 Years' War between Britain and France, and so Britain was kind of imposing on France, and they said, hey, we own this place now. At the time, France was just a mess. And then, again, if I remember correctly, Joan of Arc really helped France to establish their new king. I can't remember his name now. It's going to bug me.
It's all right. It's part of the Three No's, so
Well, that guy's so long dead. But anyway, she helped to establish the king, and then France was like, hey, look, we can do this. We can be an independent nation. Eventually, they got some big wins against Britain, or England, I guess, at the time, right?
Sounds about right.
Queen.
Whoever.
But it's kind of interesting that there's just these intense 100-year conflicts, for example, and that seems to be what everybody wants to document and talk about, of course, naturally, right?
Just the big old big old campaigns and stuff like that. But we're trying to get down to the.
I want to know
what did they do?
A day in the life of a knight.
Yeah, because obviously we're huge fans of the video game, the Age of Empire franchise. I played the second one we played it for years. You guys still play it?
I just went and got there's like a new
expansion,
definitive edition where they beefed up all the graphics, and
then of course the
history's all accurate in it.
We learned a lot of our history from that, and it's also they were interviewing. I've seen little videos on YouTube about the guys who would create it and stuff, and they are total nerds on who's like they're getting into some cool stuff too. Would this person be capable of having this kind of artillery or this kind of weaponry and stuff like that, or who fought who? But what we're trying to obviously talk about again is what was it like to the day-to-day lifestyle of it. Because I'd really like to go to a medieval times thing or something and check that out.
Right.
See how it is. Because I heard they do give you a good feel of it.
Yeah, but that's more of like a festival kind of thing. Right? Yeah, that's not really. Because that's the other thing. I have this feeling that there's just these long gaps
that we're missing.
Things happening, right?
Like we're only getting the big picture. We're not getting the
like one
details.
Specific night goes off to war. Let's say, for example. That guy goes and fights a war for who knows how long.
And what was it like?
Everything takes a long time back then, right? You got to ride your horse to get anywhere. Then this guy gets back, let's say a year later.
On a year of fighting.
Yeah, like a year at war.
Yeah, this is like hand-to-hand, swords clashing, limbs coming off, and just...
Well, but that's what I wonder if we go back to that... kind of like the battle. These guys were wearing thick armor.
Oh yeah.
You know, like,
and carrying shields and
all this. It's not like you could just stab a guy with a sword.
No, they had the chainmail on.
Knight,
yeah, they had the chainmail on to protect them in the regular armor, and so
how would you take a guy? I mean, I feel like it was just brutal, like just getting beat to death. It's not like you're gonna actually get a laceration or an arrow in you, or a puncture. You know, it's more like these guys are just beating your skull in, right? Because they can't stab you through an inch of chainmail and then steel plates.
No, and plus Hollywood does a great job of depicting battles to a certain extent, but how real, is that?
Yeah, you gotta take it with a grain of
salt. I mean, yeah, it's because obviously you got your army of thousands, you have your battering rams, you got your catapults, you gotta, siege the city first with the catapults, then you gotta break down the gates, and how realistic is that? Because they do not to do a wild turn here, but they do a good job of predicting or depicting World War II movies and Vietnam type battles, but we're talking about the Middle Ages. All we know is from the history and paintings that we can kind of get an idea of what it was like.
And again, most of that is from the Renaissance, which is after the fact. That's like for, you said, World War II, Vietnam. That's like when we talk about those, that's a little more recent for us.
Yeah, but we're talking about 100 years ago.
Those guys are writing and talking about a more recent history for them. But I feel like a lot of stuff just got lost. Just got lost to history.
A lot of it did, and you remember the movie Knight's Tale, right?
Yeah.
With Heath Ledger.
That's a winner.
I didn't see the whole thing. I saw half of it. I saw half of it the other day, and I guess I got too tired, and I kind of turned off, but I'll probably go back and finish it. But I thought it was a good idea of these guys trying to get into a tourney, which is for you nerds out there, a tourney is where they have a big party. They have
like a festival right?
Where the knights go against jousting each other and stuff like that. And they kind of do a little depictive style of what it's like day to day. People are getting robbed, they're gambling, and stuff like that.
Yeah, is still a thing.
Yeah, and guys are fall in love with princesses and this and that, and so it's still cool. But again, I think a lot of that's Hollywood, because if you're somebody in noble realm, you're going to stay in there. I mean, I'm sure they let them out, but they were probably well guarded by their knights, and they wouldn't let them talk to some stranger or just, here's my escort with me, my maiden, Right. I think they're going to be heavily guarded.
Like a class.
Yeah.
Right? Like the upper class shouldn't mingle with the lower class.
Yeah, it's like, right. It's like if you're talking about the president's, daughter or son, they're guarded by Secret Service. So obviously, same thing as a king. I'm sure their daughters are going to be escorted by
well,
guards.
And that's something that I'd be curious about, because again, correct me where I'm wrong, please. My understanding is, and I think this is pretty valid throughout time, the higher class would get the education, and they would get to do all the kind of, I don't want to say philosophical, but scholarly work. So the education, like, how many people do you think could even read back then?
Well, you had to. Obviously the ones who can afford it and have the access, and of course, if you're into royalty or upper class, you did a lot of reading. If not, you were probably into farming. And
so that's kind of what I was getting at, is the contrast in the daily life between the royalty and just the run-of-the-mill peasant, so to speak. Maybe we should get the peasant back in here. He could tell.
Well, I was trying to, man, but we'll try to get him out of his comfy zone, because once you're like a peasant or a king, you just don't want to leave that spot.
Yeah.
But so I think my theory is, after reading a lot of the Game of Thrones, which I'm almost done with the first book. Okay. Very good. You got to get reading that when you can.
I'm still skeptical. You know why? I think he ripped his whole thing off. When you guys get a chance, go look up the War of Roses, one of the craziest civil wars in England. And it's kind of interesting because not only the geography is the same as his, I don't know what the guy calls his kingdom
His story,
or whatever.
but there's
a lot of similarities.
I still see it as a coincidence because obviously you're gonna find people trying to discredit authors and this and that, forever. Be like, hey.
Well, go look at it.
But check it out for yourself.
How much of a coincidence you think it is? Because it's pretty darn.
I'm still gonna finish it. I'm still gonna finish the book, and
I'm not saying don't
read it, but you're just very skeptical.
I'm skeptical that it truly was an original piece.
Maybe we should get the author on. Hey, shout out, man! We'd love to pick your brain how you came up with the whole Game of Thrones idea, and what was your work lifestyle like developing it. So come on the show, man.
Yeah, so I really would be kind of curious if there's maybe some old journal or something from 1,500 years ago, 1,000 years ago.
Well, now you're getting kind of into there's that one book that explains it all. I think you're right about what you said.
It would be nice to know what just the day-to-day life of someone back then was like.
Yeah, but I think you're kind of contradicting yourself. But I think because what you said, I think it's true because I think a lot of this stuff just got lost into history.
Right.
There's only so much that we know, and we just kind of have to use our imaginations on what we think was like, or watch the movies, read the books, read the fantasy books, and just get an idea, of our self, what it was like, because it still is fun to read about fantasy, when they're talking about orcs and hobbits and this and that, but it's still hard to try to find a piece about if you were to come up with a fictional piece of medieval times.
Right.
So I think that might be my next project when I'm done with my current book that I'm working on. I might just go ahead and try to do not
like a medieval kind
just
of
a medieval,
I feel like that would be so much fun to write.
Oh yeah, sure. You
can
just go on and on with your kings and your noblemen, and just go be like, But the hard thing is constructing a piece like that is that there's a lot of downtime, but you can still get into a lot of the battles and.
Well, maybe that would be a cool idea, is have your protagonist just be a peasant, and then it's
work
like
his way
his
up.
rise,
to be a noble knight, to be a king.
Be a fun story. I would read that. I'd read that.
Definitely.
That
and
could be a good one.
It'll take a lot of brainstorming to do.
Yeah, get your facts right. Like I said, we aren't history majors here. We're just kind of going off of
nerding out
what we've read, but it's a fun topic. If you guys have some time, maybe ponder about it for a while. You can really go off on a lot of tangents with it. Like, how did they build their houses? Why did they build them that way? There's houses in Europe that are still around because when they built a house, they built it to last. Nowadays, we build a house. 10 years later, we're fixing stuff.
Yeah, just like you got the catacombs under, what is it, France?
Everywhere, really. And that's another thing. And then the influence of the church at the time, and then how they kept all the scholarly stuff. A lot of our history in books comes from monasteries and monks that would just sit there and
just write it all down.
That's just what they did.
But yeah, we're not getting into too much religion or politics on here because that is the gateway to that.
And again, we're just talking about Europe. What about Asia or the Americas, for example?
Yeah,
South America. Then you have, at that time, you've got, I believe the Inca Empire it's either the Inca or maybe it's the Aztecs are kind of peaking at that time. So they're sacrificing humans to the sun god and all this crazy stuff's going on in South America, and then you got these people in Europe just fighting over every inch of land, and then you go over to Asia and you've got
I also heard
it's just crazy.
I also heard that the Aztecs invented the bubble gum.
Yeah, I heard about that too. They were chewing sap from trees, I think it was,
and also chocolate, I think too, didn't they?
The cacao,
something like that. Yeah, then you have, but yeah, if we're going into with Cortez, that was a little bit later on down the line. That was more, what,
That was about
1800s?
the end of the medieval.
No,
era.
yeah, the end of it.
It's that's moving into the Renaissance, the
Yeah.
colonization of the world at that point.
Discovering of America and America.
Merc.
But yeah, so I think we covered some pretty good topics.
Definitely food for thought.
Yeah, and we would love to hear more what you guys think that we might have missed or anything like that. Our show is growing. We're getting pretty good with our videos out. We just need more guests.
Yeah, and if anybody out there has anything close to some kind of a journal or something, like a day-to-day source, I would love to know about it because I'd like to spend some time read that.
We would definitely love to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you also have a couple of horses that we can go on a friendly jousting,
sticks,
just
I wonder what
let
the
us know.
fatality rate for jousting was.
It was pretty hard depending on where you would hit that joust.
You could die pretty easy.
Yeah. Oh,
Jeez.
easily. Yeah, it was definitely a brutal times. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's all that we have for tonight. We do appreciate you tuning in and hope you enjoyed this medieval Monday. Bogan, any final words you'd like to say before you go to work tomorrow and we end the show?
I mean, nothing too extreme. I'm just still fascinated with the building techniques. Maybe we'll take an episode and I'll look into a lot of the cool ways they used to build stuff and like the materials they would use. And if you go farther back, for example, Roman concrete is something that engineers still
Masons
are just
and stuff like that,
about. Yeah. So
for sure, but
with that, maybe just stay frosty.
Oh yeah, for sure. Stay frosty, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And we will see you hopefully tomorrow. And as always, stay frosty.